Why a new stadium will mean Everton and Liverpool are going to start to have quite different characters. Concluding his three-part special, Chris Beesley speaks to Simon Inglis, a doyen in the field when it comes to football stadia writing, about Everton's proposed move to Bramley-Moore Dock and the issues clubs face when building new homes. Part 3, the future not just across the park but two clubs with very different characters, given that trying to smash through the glass ceiling to break into the Premier League's elite is only nominally easier than trying to rake water uphill. The building of Everton's new stadium could ultimately be Farhad Moshiri's great legacy to the club, who has spent the most seasons in English football's top flight but seemingly looks a long way off adding to the 9 titles that are bettered only by Manchester United, Liverpool and Arsenal. The ground issue has been at the forefront of the Blues' majority shareholder's mind since he made his initial investment back in 2016. Speaking at the time in Everton's matchday program, Mr. Moshiri declared, "We will also be looking at the best options in relation to our stadium. Goodison Park has served the club extremely well, but we need to make sure the club has a suitable stage to perform on for the future. We will review the best options and how to finance, especially as it is likely to cost a little more than the £3,000 it apparently did back in 1892. Like 1892 though, when Everton's former landlord John Holding was left to create a club from scratch to fill the financial void his tenants had left him with at Anfield, Inglis believes that the building of a stadium at Bramley-Moore Dock could become another watershed moment in the history of professional football in the city. He told The Echo, "I think in some ways you could argue that for the first time since 1892, Everton and Liverpool are going to start to have quite different characters. It will be interesting culturally. What will draw a young Merseysider in their youth to say I'll go to Everton or I'll go to Liverpool? Will this draw in bigger audiences from Wirral simply because they can see the thing? Who knows how it will open up the hinterland because it gives Everton a different viewpoint to Anfield." Stadium expert Simon Inglis assesses Blues' planned move to Bramley-Moore Dock in a 3-part interview. Part 1. Simon explains how a new stadium at Bramley-Moore Dock could work in Everton's favour. He also claims that the previous proposed move to Kirkby could have made Everton similar to Wigan. Part 2. The stadium expert suggests that Everton won't be the same club after a stadium move. In fact, no club isn't use Arsenal, Tottenham and West Ham as examples. Part 3. Inglis discusses why the new stadium at Bramley-Moore Dock will mean that the Blues and Liverpool have different characters. It's all well and good saying, Everton should do this or they should do that, but my goodness, they've had real struggles over the past couple of decades with stadium issues. Look at Luton Town. They've been trying to build a new stadium for half a century, and they've only just got planning permission for their site, so Everton's problems are not unique. Big isn't always beautiful. One of the hot topics among Evertonians themselves has been the capacity for the new stadium. Although Goodison Park now holds less than 40,000, there is also a waiting list for season tickets, and some supporters felt that the club's proposed capacity of 52,000 for Bramley-Moore Dock wasn't enough. Inglis said, "The market might not have changed that much, but fans have. At Goodison Park you've got seats built to pre-war standards effectively. There are issues with sight lines, low ceilings and the amount of leg room you've got. If you're starting from scratch, then you're going to be much bigger, and so is your stadium footprint." When Goodison was built, nobody was doing traffic impact or environmental studies, and I don't think many residents were petitioning Liverpool City Council. The notion of building a 60,000 capacity stadium in any modern city, unless you're way out in the middle of nowhere, like Bolton Wanderers ground, you're going to have issues. My belief is that Bramley-Moore Dock is a fantastic site with great potential to bring investment to that area. If there was no stadium there, you could say that development could go ahead anyway and it could be completely residential and a cultural center, but cities aren't like that. You have to accommodate all kinds of needs. He added, "If you look at the other club Everton's architect Dan Mees is working for Roma, it's very similar. A two-club city, one going in one direction and one in the other. Roma have gone for a 52,000 capacity but expandable to 60,000, so there is a pattern there. I understand that the fans will always say it's not big enough, It should be bigger, but you cannot predict the future in terms of what the market will be. The problem Everton will have is that there's only one road in and out on that site. Effectively it's a three-sided development because you've got the river on the other side. That's a fantastic asset because it will look beautiful and be a landmark, creating a real special atmosphere, but it could also be a real pain in the neck when people are trying to get out of the ground. Everton's ambitions are limited somewhat because of the site they've found, but I don't think you can criticize them for that because all the other sites they've looked haven't proven viable. A global game. Although one of Colorado-born Me's early projects came here in the northwest of England with the Manchester Arena, the majority of his work has been in his native US, but with a reputation for out-of-the-box, innovative thinking when it comes to design. Inglis is not surprised that Mr. Moshiri has cast his net widely when it comes to finding an architect for Everton's new home. He said, "In the old days, Everton employed local architects. For many years Everton, Liverpool, Manchester United and Blackburn Rovers employed a firm called Ithard and Fuller, formerly Mather and Nutter, who were based in Manchester. They were no-nonsense, cheap, cheerful and robust, not particularly glamorous designs that basically worked and were made by real football people. If you draw an analogy between that and the players and managers of the 1960s and who we have in the Premier League now, the stadium design market is international as well. The likes of Farhad Moshiri are interested in a bloke who maybe design Blackburn or Wigan's ground. He wants to go global. If you look at a firm like Populous, the world's biggest stadium designers, they did Wembley, Arsenal, the Olympic stadiums for Sydney and London, and have just done Tottenham, with branches in all continents working on big stadiums all the time. It's an international game. Their architects might be working in England one minute and Australia the next. As a result of that, it becomes harder to say what a British stadium looks like anymore. If you look at the plans drawn up for Chelsea by Herzog and de Meuron, they're absolutely beautiful, with a lot of the money to be spent on the exterior and the cladding to make sure it looks good on the outside because it's in the middle of a fancy area of West London. For Everton, the stadium has clearly got to look good from the Mersey, so in that sense you want a visionary. You don't want your bog-standard utilitarian stadium design, good though they are. You want to go higher than that with a bit of pizzazz. Can increasingly corporate Blues still be the people's club? Ultimately, Inglis believes that moving to a modern stadium will provide Everton with the kind of scope to milk the corporate market that they just cannot achieve at Goodison, but that too will have ramifications over the identity of the club. He said, "There is also a market now for non-football events within stadiums. If a stadium is well equipped, you can get the concerts in with big-name performers or get a 4 or 5-star rating from UEFA. That also means you need to bring in the top-end executive facilities that bring in the big money. It's like a jumbo jet. The people at the back are having their fares subsidized by the people at the front. Tottenham have put a lot of money into the executive facilities, and even the ordinary season ticket holders are going to have bars that are pretty sophisticated compared with what existed before. Everything goes up an extra notch and that costs money. That's supposing that there's going to be people out there who will pay for those sort of facilities, so I guess the question is, does Everton have that kind of following? On the other hand, if it doesn't, well, it's never going to have them unless you put those facilities there, then it can start to build that kind of market. But then you can do that and still be the people's club at the same time, so that's a balance that the owners and the architects are going to have to make.